How's everybody? Can you see me okay? I do too, Bobby. Right now I'm just kind of getting things sort of set up to see how it's going to work. Let me know you can see the stream if you can see it. Cool. Algo, did you get the link? Hello, Stephen Rose. It's good to see everybody. Hey, Jay, how are you? Did you get the link, Algo? Just make sure that it should work okay. Very cool. I would post it in the general. I might do that here in a little bit. Okay. So let's see here. This is all new to me. So I'm just kind of making sure that everything's in its place and everything looks like it's working, and it seems to be that. Right now, James is in the studio with me. Cool. All right. So I wanted to talk about alien abduction and astral projection. So, I mean, what I've noticed a lot, and I don't know about you guys, Stephen, well, I don't know. I think maybe a lot of people have been. So I kind of have a long spectrum of things to talk about. So I was thinking kind of how I wanted to approach it. And the first thing I wanted to notice and to talk about was that, well, first of all, I'm Jennifer Hawkins, and this is my channel. Hello, Jeff. Hello, everybody. I'll have to figure out how to make moderators in case. I think in general, since we're just kind of a small group, as long as everybody's like polite and everything, it should be totally cool. But I hope that you guys are interested in this topic. I hope that it's something that you yourself have thought about before or wondered about. Alien abduction itself is something that I've always been. I actually wasn't very interested in UFOs or anything like that for the longest time. And because I was having more of like, spiritual experiences, and I was hearing a lot more about people having spiritual experiences more so than having necessarily like UFO alien abduction. Although I would hear a lot of reports from people, and when I was doing research about it, and just personal experiences that I would have, that they would account that many times it was happening while they were sleeping. And it's good to see everybody. But they would have accounts that it was happening when they were going to bed, or it would happen in congruence with like sleep paralysis and things like that. And it seemed to them, usually upon waking, that they were probably just having a dream or something. And they oftentimes would think that they were simply dreaming. But I think that that's some type of systematic programming to make people believe that the dream state itself, to give it less credit, that there might be something involved in the system that is attempting to make people think that the dream state is less than what it actually is. If you were to take it for exactly what it is, to me, it would seem that you are going somewhere in the middle of the night and, having experiences there of some type. And, but people have discounted it because, I hope people don't message me right now. Anyway, but I think people discredit it, or they discount that it could be an abduction experience, or that they might be having some kind of paranormal experience, or that they may be encountering entities on this plane of sleep or pre-sleep, right to that junction between going to sleep and waking up. And they have their massive experiences at that moment, and then they have these entire journeys. And we hear about this in all kinds of folklore too, where you have the accounts of people talking about the nightmare and the night hag and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of checking out the chat here. Hello, Ricky Pike. How are you? So good to see everybody. So anyway, if you think about the ancient world, people are always talking about, in fact, they gave more credit to their dreams sometimes and would consider that to be just as real of a world as this world right here. And really interesting about that, when you think about Plato, when you think about these old philosophers, they oftentimes talked about that was the truest form, the truest state of existence in a way. It was coming from the mind itself. And that was a perfect vision of reality in a way, and that we were just trying to imitate it in the physical realm, or it was a projection of into the physical realm. So this strange idea that we may be encountering, and maybe even that these entities that people refer to as aliens or fae folk or whatever, the reason it's so strange for people is because perhaps that is where they kind of reside, is in this realm that we visit while we're sleeping. And in some cases, I think they experience some sort of a phenomena where it feels as if they are no longer, not only are they in a dream, but the dream is being controlled, the reality is being controlled by the beings they're coming in contact with. So I'm just starting with that right now. And I want to go ahead and try bringing in James Salsido, if you are ready to come in. And I want to start having some conversations with the guests who are here with us tonight. I want to make sure that everybody has a respectful amount of time to talk and gets to share their ideas. This can hold up to like 10 people. We're not going to try to do a whole lot of people because I think it gets crowded. And I like to kind of keep a round table of about 3 people. And I think as long as we're all being respectful and decent, that, oh, there's a guy in a private chat. Let me see. I see, James. Okay. All right. I'll have to. Did Night Stalker get here? Night Stalker made it. I'm glad you made it. I'm so excited. Okay, let's talk about this, though. I want to stay on topic. James Salsido, I'm going to bring you in, and we'll figure out if it works okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. This is going just great. All right.
Good, I'm glad.
I'm happy to have you here. I'm glad you made it.
Oh, of course. I'm really glad to be here and part of this, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had to. All right. So now you heard a little bit what I was running down. I really wanted to talk about this just right off the top with my first live show, because I think it gets to the very root of a lot of the personal things people feel when they're in a vulnerable state. They're very vulnerable while they're trying to sleep, and then they report having these experiences. You yourself have reported experiences like this to me, so I want to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, well, it would make sense to me that this is a a metaphysical or an energy based thing more than a physical thing, because I feel like if people were really being taken physically from places, there might be more physical evidence of it, but you don't hear about a lot of that, at least not all the time. So it definitely fits for me anyway, I think.
Mm-hmm. What else
So
do you think of? I mean, do you think that when people are dreaming, and we've talked about this a lot in the past, and I've linked some shows. Night Stalker, I didn't realize that you were going to make it for sure, and I didn't link it down in the description. But all the folks I'm hoping that will talk this evening, I have linked their show and their podcasts down in the description of the YouTube the description, so you can follow them and check out what they have. And we've talked about a lot of the stuff in the past. I just wanted to especially talk about it because I like to talk about it. But okay, so James, do you think that there are something that maybe, as we've heard, that there are positive spirits and negative spirits, and that there are positive genie and jinn, and negative jinn, that there are parasites, and that there are helping spirits. And so you have this very diverse selection. Also people too, they have 2 sides, of course, that many times people are encountering perhaps these different spectrums of beings. And do you think it's even conceivable that they could be living, or literally living, and that we are living too in some other world entirely, and that when we go into a certain state of mind, perfectly in the sleep state with the alpha waves and the right balance of when you're sleeping, that we're tuning in to where they are, by going inward and actually not going outward or something? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's it's just like with any kind of being, there's going to be a range, like you said, of good and bad and probably neutral beings, and whether you want to call them spirits or aliens or any of those things, I think words can be tricky in that way. But yeah, I think you know, I don't know if you want, I could go into my experience real quick. That kind of my quote unquote abduction experience.
Yes, and
Um,
as much detail as you can. Please do.
yeah, yeah. So I had a about 10 years ago or so now. I had a experience where I had gone to sleep. It was at night, at some point at night, and I had this. I don't even know what it was really, except maybe some kind of a astral travel or dream experience where I found myself on this. It wasn't my couch, which I was using as a bed at the time, because I could feel that it was just a flat um, surface, and it was hard. It was either metal or something very hard. It was not like the couch I was laying on,
Hmm.
and and I was stuck there. I couldn't move. So that was odd. It was also I could see the walls around me were blue, and but they had these white cabinets with electronics in them at different points, which is odd.
Hmm.
No monitors, no screens, but just like, I guess maybe you could say like computer systems. Um, and that was all I could really see of my surroundings. But I could also see these two or three gray blurs. I couldn't see them in detail, but I could just see blurs. Probably because I couldn't move, except for my eyes a little bit. But it could also be they would have appeared as blurs anyway. Moving around me, and above me it was just light, and but I could see something coming down from the light, and and I was trying to move and I couldn't, and it was it was kind of disturbing at first, and it got more so because I could see something coming down from the ceiling, and so I was trying to move and I couldn't, and eventually I heard two voices. It sounded like my parents' voices, except there was no motion, and I didn't believe it was them, even though they said it's everything's going to be okay. And I looked over kind of as much as I could, and I saw two more gray blurs, and I knew it wasn't my parents. And so I tried to move even more, and eventually this thing that came down from the ceiling turned out to be some kind of a robotic arm or extension kind of thing, and it had a needle at the end of it, and it came down and towards my left eye, and I only came out of this, whatever this is.
And you couldn't move, right?
Yeah, I couldn't
You're like
move at all,
paralyzed.
and I only came out of it or woke up or came back. I don't even know what that was. Um, I only got out of that when it touched my left eye. I could feel something touch my left eye, and that's when everything went black, and then I woke up, or I
Okay.
came to, or I don't even know what exactly you call that, because it felt like a real experience.
Yeah. Well, like lucid dreaming and stuff like that, people talk about that, and it is real to them. In fact, like we've talked about. Remember, we were talking about all that remote viewing stuff, and we were saying that lucid dreaming, that people were able in some of these studies, the government had done all these sleep studies, and they were working with professional lucid dreamers, and the lucid dreamers were able to they trained up for it, to become these professional lucid dreamers, I suppose you would say. And apparently they were able to locate items in a room that they were doing the sleep study in. The task was to identify a picture that was in an envelope. And eventually the dreamers did get to where they would get up in the dream, walk over to the curio, look in the envelope, and see the picture of the item that they and come back from the sleep state and report to the sleep study specialists what was in that envelope. Do you remember us talking about that?
Vaguely, but yeah, and that's amazing because that's. And I'm sorry if you hear my heater just turned on.
I have my heater on too. I have all kinds of
Okay.
outdoor noises and stuff, and I have my
Yeah.
window open. It's hot,
But
but it's stuffy, so I have the window open and the heater on. It's not
oh
really,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
no, I'm in Michigan, so but yeah, it's amazing if it seems like dreams and or the sleep being asleep or different kinds of states of consciousness are just a doorway into almost every kind of paranormal dimension that's out there, which
hmm
is really amazing to me. That that's even a thing, and it just I don't doubt that I imagine there's even more secret stuff out there, experiments, programs, whatever, that are still going on that are looking into all these things because they've already proved so much that they can do these things. And if you have all the money and all the time, then why wouldn't you be looking into these things?
especially the governments. Yes, I would think that they'd be doing a lot of study with this. In fact, I wanted to get into that. That I think there is something. Does anybody else want to come in here in a little bit? I have 4 dogs, so they're gonna bark. There's gonna be noises. I have cats and stuff.
It's not too bad so far. Just so you know, the barking, I heard it just a little bit.
It's honestly just gonna have to be a part of it.
Oh
Like, there's
yeah,
just nothing I
no,
can do. But so I was thinking about that because I wanted to get into that too, because you were saying that it's not as if you were in some type of like fairy glen or anything like that. You were seeing like cabinets and there were bright lights, and this is reported many times that people say that, hello, Algo. It's good to see you. I bring you in here in just a second and see what you think too. And we're all just gonna be cool and let everybody else talk. Like in bits. And I think that 4 will probably be the max that could be like in here. I'm gonna let people that I don't know do this to come in too. Right now I'm totally cheating and only letting like 4 people that I know. But eventually we'll let more people to come in. Okay, so what I was getting at, what I want to say is the government aspect of it. Is it possible? This is just an idea I want to bring onto the table. That I've heard many different stories from people like Donald Marshall. You may have heard of him. He's kind of famous in the cloning um, league of people, the cloning conspiracies, and that they have these that they get to people in the dream states. They have their DNA already. Is kind of the gist of it. That they get it from birth. That they get it because of some nefarious way that they get a hold of the DNA. Then they clone an individual. This was what he was saying. And that they get the people in the sleep state. Now, what I thought was weird about that, and this is just my opinion with the Donald Marshall thing, that this is something beyond just some type of literal physical clone. I think the clone of the person is their astral body. Does that make sense? And like that perhaps they're somehow able to have a link, maybe through the blood or DNA, to an individual who is sleeping, the target, as it were, and they are able to make. Sorry about my phone. I guess I'll just have to. I don't know how. I thought I turned it off or down.
technology can be weird, but no problem.
Yeah, everybody can. We can all handle it because it's just normal.
Yeah,
Um, but I think that if they did have just a little piece of a person or something, that they would be able to somehow reach across, you know, the depths of the mind or whatever. Like, because I don't think they're going across space at like distance, like we think of it, like floating across the town and into the person's home. Maybe that is something that is happening with some beings, but in some accounts, I think that it's possible that they are through the mindscape somehow, like they may be working with telepathic agents or something, and that they are reaching through the scape and getting a hold of individuals while they're sleeping in their bed, and they're drawing by some kind of magnetic force that spirit of that person, that astral body of that person, perhaps, to these other locations, and they're having and that maybe even he was saying rulers of the world and stuff were at these locations, but they were there in physical form. But he was feeling like he had or no, was it that they were creating? I think it was also that they were creating these clones and then putting the consciousness into them. That's what it was. anyway, if you're not familiar with the cloning stuff and all of that, that's neither here nor there. But it would make sense that if there were entities, and always have been on the fairy realm or whatever, that they would be working with them, especially because they would be aware of having encountered them through all the rituals they've done in civilizations, of creating civilizations, and it would make a lot of sense. Algo, I'm bringing you in. Are you ready? I'm just going to click it.
Hi, Jennifer. Hi, James.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thank you. Hey, firstly, thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me on. Congratulations on your first live. I think it's going really well. And one of the benefits to live streaming is you don't have all the preparation and all the video time and all the stuff. You just click it and go. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Good.
And I just want to like hear what you think too. I want to hear all the stuff. And thank you for saying that. And I was super nervous. You have no idea. I was like, ooh, I'm so nervous. And then I was just like, I haven't got, it worked out though. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's working out great. Nobody can tell you're nervous until you tell us. I mean, you look like a pro.
Good.
As far as the sleep, I'm a prolific dreamer.
Yeah.
And I have lucid dream on more than 5 occasions, but less than 10. So I haven't ever had an experience like James to where I was trapped in something, but I have had many, many, many dreams where I have battled and battled to not be either taken or I've been chased a lot. And my dreams are always in color, and I remember them, and I'm literally dream probably 5 to 6 times every week. So I can take a nap and dream. And so I think there is something to it not being just our mind. I mean, it is our mind, of course, but I do think our mind does sometimes, it has the ability to cross whatever veils are keeping us in this 3D sensory place. Because I know everybody knows from just an energetic standpoint, this is not the only thing that's going on. And there's more than just here. The fact that we see so little of the light spectrum and we hear so little of the auditory spectrum tells me that there's so much more in that we could experience. And I think we get the chance to do that when we're dreaming.
I do too. So we're seeing without even using our eyes. And people, a lot of times it's weird. They have trouble like getting their mind around that, but we do it all the time. I don't know why that we don't need to have our eyes open and functioning, but the body seems to be like, do you think that we're abandoning the body? Do you think it's an inward thing where we're experiencing it somewhere? By inward, I mean like kind of inside out world, that somehow we're going like into the atoms and into these worlds that are within us. Like somehow it's an inverted thing rather than floating across the terrain, for example, in a physical, spiritual form. Do you think it's possible? Like, what do you think about that? What's your opinions about that?
Well, I'd say from the lucid dreams I've had, it definitely, you can touch things and feel it and experience it as if it were the same reality that we're experiencing together right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's just my internal landscape. I'm more inclined to think that when I hit that dream place, I'm like free to visit and free to travel and free to go the places that we don't get to go when we're here,
How did we, then like, how do you think we're getting, I believe too that it's not like I'm trying to, that it's not the imagination.
Right.
But that the imagination is a real actual place where like we have an inner window that we're seeing it somehow, or it appears that way to us, that we have some type of inner vision of this other world where we do all our imagining, where we can visualize somebody if we want to. But we're not. Anyway, okay, so the predator class of these different beings that are operating in that realm, what do you think they want? what do you think that they could be wanting with people? And do you think they're taking advantage of our lack of understanding of the astral plane or something?
Well, the second one for sure. Whatever as they call the astral plane, we're taught the opposite of that, that it doesn't exist. People write zillions of books to give symbology to dreams, to take people away from that experience, in my opinion, because there's no way a person who wrote a book about this thing means this in a dream can know what's going on inside of me, my life, my points of interest, and so forth. So they couldn't even know that, chewing on a cup of corn and losing your teeth doesn't mean that you're going to lose all your money in my world. Because, but they put that in books and people believe it. So I think it distracts us from that. But back to the beings, that what do they want from us? I guess if anything, it's hard. That's a tough question because, I don't have a specific answer, but I think when we come into this realm, we probably could travel to those at will in our waking state. But as soon as you come out of the womb, in modern society anyway, you're basically taught how to live in this place.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to explore it on your own. You don't get to figure it out on your own. And when you're a small child, in my case, or people I know, anytime psychic ability or astral dreaming or anything like that came up, the parents were always really quick to dismiss it as, oh, it's just a dream.
Yeah,
And
they
that's
do, because
really common.
it's because, I mean, well, they're told that themselves, and they had to discount, and they wake up the next day and they're fine. But maybe you've got your leg chopped off in a dream, but so obviously it's not connected. But it's strange to think about the replication of souls in the realm, in the dream state, where there can be several of you. For example, one of them, in one dream you may fall off a cliff or something, but in another dream you're walking down the street. So there seem to be your mind just keeps turning up a new one every single time it goes to sleep. And in some occasions, it seems like the same character of ourselves in the dream is experiencing a series of an ongoing story. Have you ever had that happen to you, where it seems like in that state there's an ongoing story for yourself in the dream? You ever had that happen, like you wake up from a dream and then somehow it seems like the dream picks right back up again, or something like that?
I've had that happen, and that's kind of interesting. The part that's more interesting, you kind of triggered it in my mind, was I've dreamt kind of rolls right off the back of it, and it's a different setting.
Say again, because it I don't know if it dropped out for anybody else, but it dropped out for me just for a few seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry, my internet cuts out. Hear me?
No, don't change anything. Just say.
No, I'm not gonna. Yeah, what's more interesting to me is that I've had off a cliff. I'd be right in another dream. Recollection of the previous one until the next morning when I was in this waking state. That's been interesting, and having a dream within inside of a dream is also really interesting to me. And I've had those on multiple occasions, and I can't explain it, but I've been in a dream, and then I think I wake up and I'm ready to do my stuff, and then I'm in a dream. And that's generally when I can kick into lucid dreaming, the few 6 maybe done it.
We'll just wait and see if it comes back. I think I have the link here.
Oh, I don't know where I left.
You're fine. Okay, just pick up now. Okay, I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
Do you think that so when people have these abduction experiences, do you think it's possible that they aren't even leaving their bed, but that somehow, kind of like I was talking about the clonade thing that we've heard of, like the Donald Marshall story, that somehow these beings are either they're coming to the individual and then taking them with them somewhere in a astral form rather than actually physically taking them, and that's why there's no proof that they were abducted, but they have this experience and it seems so real in the case like James had, for example?
I would say absolutely. Yeah, that's more likely to me to be the case than being out on a country road and getting probed and then waking up in your bed and losing time. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's more plausible.
yeah,
And I think it would make sense too. In from it's hard. I think we mostly know the physical realm, and if you were a being that could do that in the astral realm, you could get all as same amount of information. I think.
yes. I think if you trained in it for sure. So like, okay, so we're talking about alien abduction in the sense of people being abducted while they're sleeping, and because it's so prevalent, and you have the folklore talking about the night hag and the the chest press thing where it sits on their chest, like I had the picture in the avatar thing. And it seems as if people are having this experience, the sleep paralysis, where they can't move. And though we explain it today in the modern world by saying that it's some type of, I mean, I know that the classic explanation for it, that it's just the brain is doing something abnormal, that it's not completely asleep. But we're going to skip all of that and just throw caution to the wind and try to tie in, because we have to consider this, because I think it makes sense, because from what people have said, when you listen to all the different types of stories people have, that they might be getting abducted in their sleep state, and their body doesn't leave the bed, but it's as if some aspect of their soul, or like one of their bodies or something, or just their sleeping, like something in their mind, is being taken. So I'm going to bring in Liam Martin. This is Rohan from Exiled Minds podcast. You can find a link to his show down in the description. He's really cool. So we're going to add him in.
Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Hello. Okay? How are you?
All right, enjoying it. It's good. You're doing a good job, Jen.
Hi, Rohan.
Thank you. Yes, it's working just fine.
Okay. Technology. We're in the future.
We're in the future, yes. Okay. So you've heard of, did you just get here, or like, I think
No,
okay. Okay. So what do you think?
Well, yeah, there's a few things here. This is a can of worms. It's funny how Algo just mentioned like a dream within a dream, because it's a bit like this, and it's like Inception, And in fact, I'll go in reverse, because he just mentioned that. It triggered a memory for me. When I was 17, I in my misspent youth was doing stupid stuff that sometimes makes you pass out, right? Anyway.
Oh yes, okay.
Yeah, so I've done that. Just I don't know why, but I passed out. Mate gives me a beer hug, taking a spliff and that, whatever. And I passed out, right? Tried to take it as long as I could, but as soon as my feet hit the ground, as soon as I felt the soles of my feet touch the ground, I felt like I fell through the floor, and I was in a bed, and it was like decades ago. Do you know what I'm saying? And I was like totally somebody else with backstory, and I was I gotta go to work, working at some mill in Boston, in America, centuries ago, right? And I goes to bed that night, yeah, wakes up as another person, woman, right? And, do you know what I mean? Backstory. So it goes about my day, and it kept happening, Jennifer. It kept happening, and I thought, what the hell is that? And it happened hundreds and hundreds of times, but it's so hard to process, and it gets faster and faster, and it's like, I don't know, are they my lives, somebody else's? Have I slipped into a side stream in the dream world? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it's like, it feels like being pulled through it all, and it goes faster and faster, like a tunnel of experiences, and then it's just improcessable. Then it just blacks out. And,
okay, so let me ask you this: do you think that there is some type of species that is naturally, their natural state is telepathic, and that they are messing with us for some reason?
Well, I think all of the above. I think there's, right. I feel, having read the Robert Monroe books and thought about it, and stuff. The Robert Monroe books say that there's not just the dream world. There's like different layers. There's another world like this one, totally like this one, but there's little differences. Do you know what I'm saying? It's very similar to this, but they've got roughly the same technology level, just gone a bit different. But then he talks about most of the dream realm is what he calls this like locale 1, and then the dream world locale 2, and then this other place that's a bit like this locale 3. But in the dream world, that's the mind space. And he's saying in there, anything that anybody's ever thought is real. It's there. It's real there. You've got all kinds of entities that will like jump on you, like kids on your back and that. You can't get rid of them. And you'll try and pull their arm off and it's made of like stretchers.
Because they can like adapt to the, because they're malleable in that realm. Kind of the idea of like the fae folk, the jinn, the demons people talk about, that were some type of race that was born from, I've heard that in some accounts, I mean, we're not going to go so much into that because that would be trying to define. Actually, we could go into that. But because I think just trying to figure out, like, okay, have you ever heard of psychic driving before, Liam?
I've heard the term. Explain for me, please, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll do my best. It's the idea basically that people who have, or end up some type of, a lot of times it's put across as if it's some type of species that is not ourselves, even though I think that it doesn't have to be that way at all. I think that there could be individuals that have trained maybe for the governments even, and that they are located somewhere in one of the realms or on the earth itself, in some location, maybe on a mountaintop, but they have like this superpower of telepathy, and they can travel across, like, and get into people's minds. And then once they access the mind of the individual bit by bit with telepathic message, like they're listening to them at first, then they begin to place ideas into the individual, and then they are able to guide the person as an inside, like an inner speaker of sorts, like an inner guide of sorts, and somehow guide that person about psychic driving, where it's their eyes looking out. And the way this would tie into this is if there is a species, an alien species, that is telepathic and is able to psychic drive people through telepathy, the idea would be that through repetitive abduction in the sleep state and kind of a mapping of the mind while the individual is sleeping, that they eventually accomplish psychic driving, wherein they can see the world from inside that person's eyes, basically, and influence their environment and make contact with other would-be psychically driven vehicle people, or however you might say it. And then the idea that this could be something that's being utilized by the government, or that the government itself is being used this way, and our government doesn't even realize, or that the world leaders do not even realize that they are not.
Yeah.
So your turn, go.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm down with all of that. And funnily enough, we talk about the remote viewers sometimes, Foresight Institute, the independent folk. They did a Tesla project recently. It was the latest big project. I can tell you now, that's exactly what they're saying was going on with Tesla. That story is kind of far out, but they're basically saying that the deal was Tesla was like a project, and it could have been anybody. But they went got this person, whatever, and they've gone in. And it's the way they described it. It starts off, you think you're going to hear about Tesla, and it does show the Tesla stuff, but it begins with a planet that sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings and some elven world where the structures of the architectures embedded with nature and intertwined. And they've got this project, and there's this certain person that's almost like Quantum Leap in Sam Beckett. And one guy's got the job to go and jump into a person on Earth and bring this stuff to the world. And that ends up being the story of Tesla. But they were saying that it was fascinating that there's lots of people getting into that Tesla just to observe. Like the Truman Show, they're doing nothing. They're not to do. They're just watching. A lot of people was watching Tesla, even going in to the avatar. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that thing, it's like that stuff. And definitely on the government bit, they most certainly, of course, like mentioned earlier, the funding and resources for these kinds of studies to do them properly is always with militaries and governments, because they've just got the funding. So it has to get developed there first, because that's just where the stuff is. And Robert Monroe, right, bearing in mind he was the first person in the public domain writing about this stuff, when he tried to visit Kennedy, because he happened to be in the area, think, well, I can, go out my body, I try and see Kennedy. And he got shot at in the Astral OBE thing by a guy on the ground. And then that guy later on appeared in the air in a suit like an agent and was quizzing him and saying, "Oh, no, you can't, the president's not available," as if he's got an astral bodyguard. And that's in the 60s. We didn't get the Stanford Research Institute doing remote viewing until the 70s, a decade later. You know what I'm saying? So one agency don't know about it. The CIA gets a project there, or maybe that's a ruse to make it look like they don't know about it. But of course, we know that 10 years before, Monroe's talking about astral bodyguards, and then we've got MK Ultra in between. So yeah, they've been doing that shit since forever.
I wonder if the government systems themselves, if you have like the CIA and you have the psychic driving thing that can be happening to any individual on the planet itself. Like it could happen to any plain person, wherever if they were a telepathic race and they were able to see that they just need to influence a certain thing in a certain area to happen, they need to manipulate this certain individual to make this happen. Are we not coming close to talking about kind of like the mind of God idea of the way that if they are able to affect reality this way, where would the line? I mean, there would be no limit to the amount of power if this was an actual species. Would it be possible that the governments themselves are trying to actually fight on a mindscape against these beings? Or they could be of course, coercion with it. Like they could be working together, but they also could be trying to find a way. Maybe we have been, but I feel like the government itself, unless they've been, if they have been compromised by these beings taking them over, which goes into possession and stuff like that, though. Basically, James, what do you think?
This is reminding me of stories you can find every once in a while about people who are just going about their daily life and they see someone walking down a street or in a car and they see almost this image of like a monster, like the person that they're looking at has like a like they're not human, and they see that just for a minute or so, and then the image goes away and it looks like a regular person. I've heard that where it's almost like these people have like look almost reptilian, or like they have extremely long teeth, like they're smiling at the person that's seeing them. And then of course they look away and look back and it's normal. I just wonder how much of that, when people see these strange things in the middle of the daytime, just out and about, if this is something to do with that, because it seems like it could be, because in these stories nothing really happens other than the witness seeing what looks like a glimpse into this other person, and maybe their state of mind or their energy, or I don't really know what, but that's what this has me thinking. And going back to just real quick, my experience, I don't know that it was aliens. That's the thing about that experience, is that I know what I saw and what I sensed, but I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't say for sure that it was an alien abduction experience. It was just a really odd experience that I had where I was stuck and I couldn't move, and this needle came down towards my eye, and then I came out of it. And again, I don't know for sure what that was, but yeah, great conversation. And I did want to say this has been great, and I'm enjoying this, and yeah, great job, Jennifer, as well.
Yeah, thank you. Do you think that so you're not convinced that like the alien thing? I think too, like, because people tend to think that this is some type of, what do you think it was? Do you think it was? What do you think it was?
Yeah, it could have been alien. I'm not ruling it out completely, but also I'm sorry?
Spirits?
Maybe, possibly. Maybe spirits, maybe alien, maybe even there's also the idea that there are, again, government type abductions, or just corporations or whatever, and if they can do this mental, this astral, spiritual travel, then there's no reason they couldn't also have been responsible for that. Because just the other thing that happened with that experience was just after that time is when I started experiencing um, more problems with my eyes as far as increased strain and light sensitivity. That started after that experience. So I don't know if it's directly connected, but also the timing is odd.
Mm-hmm. Algo, do you think it's aliens per se, or do you think it's like some type of something else, like a secret race, like a species of creature that is terrestrial but is telepathic, or do they live in that realm where that's why we encounter them in the dream state, or are they here and they're able to travel there too and access us that way? Or do you think that they are some type of like the jinn type of thing, or like what do you think it is that people are encountering?
I don't think they exist in this physical place. I would wager that they do exist in the, for lack of a better word, multiverse, or right behind the veil. To get back to real quick to your government, their control, and it is super interesting, bodyguards, and that they've done all of these programs with all of the resources available. They can find all the people most susceptible. When people doubt those kind of experiences, I just say look around the world the past 2 years, almost 3 now, and look at the vast multitude of people that are like completely different than us. This is a different group. You think for yourselves. You don't necessarily believe anybody. And if there were a program to hijack, and you said hijack government, but hijack populations, through that, I see that it happened, and they did a really good job, and they hijacked the vast majority of the world over a thing the past few years. So did it happen in the energetic realm when they're sleeping? Maybe. And then did it play out in the physical? That could be. I have never seen a green alien in physical form. So these entities, the jinn or the spirits, I do believe they exist. I don't think they exist here. This is like our safe haven. Unfortunately, we don't do that with each other, but it's our safe haven for most of that. And the vast majority of the time people have problems is either serious intoxication of substances, sleep, they lose time, there's blackout moments. By the same token, I think some substances can open that veil, DMT, ayahuasca, other things, to where you get a glimpse and you're in mostly your rational mind. So I kind of see it as we're on the main stage, and then you just move the curtain a little bit, and that's where everything else exists.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense too. I think it all makes sense for sure. I wonder. So they could be any of these things. They could be like you're saying, but okay. So the interest in taking the person while they're sleeping because they are in that vulnerable state, and then they do something with them. They put them back into the person's body, or the body comes back from that place, and they're changed somehow, or they don't remember anything about what happens. I wonder if you could be in the walking state, day-to-day life, get abducted, like people talk about, and not even know it, because they talk about that they have no memory of it. Kind of like when the effect of when you wake up from a dream and you can't remember it, but you can faintly remember that something happened. Couldn't that kind of amnesia, kind of like the Men in Black, forget your memory thing, couldn't that possibly happen too? Even at some moment in the waking day, they could just move you here, move you there, but there's something in your own mind kind of working things out. I don't think that it has to go that far, but I think it's conceivable to explain things like when people talk about that they're driving their car and they have missing time, even in the wake state. What do you think?
I used to I could do the missing time thing when I had a commute, but it was because I was just thinking about other things. So I don't know. I don't have that experience. I don't rule things out. I'm more inclined to think that Creator gave us this time when we're not sleeping to be free of that for the most part. I don't know that we're
Yes.
necessary. I don't think this place can be infiltrated. I think we can leave it, and we leave it nightly, and we leave it on DMT and different things, and even severe, other types of drugs. You can leave this place, but I think while we're here, we get the chance to not have to deal with that. That's just my inclination.
What about if they're able to manipulate other individuals around you through like the telepathic state? Do you think that's something that's possible?
I think
since they can't really, you know what I mean? Like, since they can't be in the physical realm, since that they aren't allowed to be in this realm, would that be some reason to want to get to affect the mind of an individual, to impact them to do some type of works that to puppet them, so to speak? Do you think that's something that could be like achievable if we're going to say that there is possibly some type of species that lives in another realm that is not this one, but can they use the pathways of the mind somehow to get here and to also work through people, as people have reported in the instances where they feel that they are telepathy and studies they've done with telepathy, and that we are able to do telepathic things ourselves. If this is a species that can do telepathic things and they live in another world, are they using it like our minds, like a radio telephone type thing, and somehow affecting the world that way, perhaps, but might not actually attacking us? But
well, yeah, 100%. And I hate to reference it again, but I can look to the past couple of years where a ton of people had what I call a mind virus. They couldn't think rationally, they couldn't accept the truth of real science, and they had a mind virus. And it could be communicated through media. It can be probably communicated directly. I think there's been examples of assassins throughout history and people who have committed heinous things to where they're like, there's no way I did that. That was not me. So,
right.
But yeah, one for 15 years is guard your mind. Because if you're not in charge of your own mind, something else is.
Yeah, and it seems like all of the old mysteries were focused very much about that. It was all about kind of clearing the slate, not just for the sake of having a clear mind, but so that you could detect if something was not usually, something that wasn't usually there was suddenly there. You would be able to detect that and see that, like, that's not my usual mind. Something is interfering. And yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. The Solomon, I wanted to mention the implants thing, like the people talking about when they get abducted and they're in this, how do we explain the implants, right? They're like, I have an implant. People say that, and you're just like, okay, and but they want it to be found. They want it to be shown in an X-ray. But it's strange because when they talk about things like the Seal of Solomon in the old occult stuff, I'm just gonna edge on that a little bit because I think there could be a connection. There might be, so we might as well look at it. But the Seal of Solomon, these seals of Solomon, that he had these symbols that he was able to bend the demons to his will, that he was sending it through, that it was the sigil was like an imprint, not physically on the, like, it was a imprint on the astral plane onto that demon. And then, because a lot of magic with the Seal of Solomon is really just about focusing on the symbol itself, and that somehow that conjures up this demon and puts them under your control and that kind of thing, and so forth. But what if these implants, in a way, are some type, like it's a type of a marking, like, I don't know, some type of a mark on the astral plane of that individual, where they feel like they've been, like, they have a connection to me from now on, like that tracking sort of. That's what the implant's about, I suppose, or to affect the person in some way. But most people report it as being like a tracking device, kind of like the thing with the Clonade, the Donald Marshall and the cloning facilities, that somehow the cloning facilities were able to draw the soul of the individual to the cloning facility, into the clone, to animated. I know it's extremely French topic on that front, but the concept of having some piece of someone isn't. And we hear about that with the fetishes of voodoo and every other type of old witchcraft of like Africa or anywhere in the world, really. These little pieces of the individual that somehow it's like, I have a piece of you, but, and then they are able to somehow manipulate that person. Actually, strangely enough, like, I mean, a lot of the jokes about the voodoo dolls, that they are puppeting them in a way and making them do things they usually wouldn't do. So this concept seems to go kind of, goes there too. What do you think, Liam? You like magic stuff.
Yeah, this is kind of up my alley. There's been a lot of things been said, but going in reverse again. Yeah, that thing, the implants. I remember when, was it Roger Weir that used to take them out? And he said that some of them move away from the scalpels and you'd have to trap them. I think Whitley Strieber had one took out by him, I'm pretty sure. And he says his was like long, almost like a centipede.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like moved around and stuff, And so, but then it gets me thinking, going back to Algo saying about the mind virus. Well, it strikes me that in that John Lam Lash, who does a non-Christian perspective study of the Nag Hammadi text, he was saying that, look, the Gnostics, that they broke a vow of silence, right, to warn the ancient Greeks, who called them, the Telestai, the know-it-alls, right? They broke a vow of silence to warn the ancient Greeks that the Archons are masters of virtual reality and manipulation, and they're always try and put these mind viruses in. And they said that Abrahamic religions contain a mind parasite, and this idea of a chosen people will keep people separate forever, and you've got to stamp it out because that's the way in. And guess what happened to them? They got stamped out, right? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not picking on anybody individually, but historically, they said that.
No, we have to pick on everybody. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly, but we do. We have to follow where the information goes, don't we? And if that makes somebody look bad, that's on them.
Yeah, it's not a person. It's just it's not an individual.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of different ideas that can go in a lot of different directions. And
exactly.
I think it's super important to see every aspect, because a religion is just not cut and dry. There's a lot of personal experiences that people are having that have nothing to do with this whatsoever. That they are not being affected that way because they have heard a different message. So I think it's just like every type of spectrum of belief. And I like people to have all kinds of beliefs.
Cool.
But yes, say what you're going to... So a mind virus of sorts.
Yeah, it was the mind virus thing. Yeah.
Reminds me of the worm,
Yeah. And then you think about the way Strieber described that thing. I'm thinking to that little tracker that they put in the Matrix that they have to get out of you to find you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. So there's something with... That's a good point.
Right, and so then Roger Weir, who's studying these things, the only signal he's found in is radio frequency, RF, short range. So he's like, well, if these are trackers, man, this is local. This is terrestrial.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it? But these are sophisticated enough to, you needed to put them in plasma from blood. It would always deteriorate, but you figured if you trick it, think it's still in the body, put it in blood plasma, it stays. So it's like, say, you're saying, what is this stuff? This is very all profound dreams. If you think about it, dreams, they're kind of like psychedelic experiences, aren't they? But then again, which one's real? Is this the dream, really? Do you know what I'm saying? And then that crosses over with, like, say, with the alien stuff and abductions. And it's like, well, are these just different modes of thinking? Going back to, that's what I'm going with this, is these just different modes of thinking that we thought of as magic? Yeah, like with the breathing techniques of Wim Hof. That's just one example where there's a technique we can do this with a body we didn't know about it. Like change your body temperature, you can control your autonomic systems. And like you've mentioned before, people linking together at concerts. Even Tom Petty in Esquire magazine was talking about how, like, when you've got 20,000 people staring at you, and it's like this kind of energy that's like electric. He says it's hard to describe. It's so powerful. And he said it's so powerful you can hurt yourself, not even realize. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like, what if you've got a whole collective of people then like Archons deciding to pick on one person, and then maybe, I don't know, some other group, reptilians or whatever. It'd be easy to mind control folk, I reckon, with this stuff. So it can get dark, like David Jacobs said. If they can put false memories in your brain and false feelings in your heart, it's almost like you got no chance. But then I like to think, so I can sleep at night, light's stronger than dark. There's good people out there as well as bad people. Do you know what I'm saying?
You ever heard of like sin eaters, where they have to like, it's an old thing where people like literally like they these people think of themselves as preying on these types of things, like they are eating them. Look up, if you Google up, guys, sin eaters, villages in the old world had assigned sin eaters, and these sin eaters, these people trained to like, you know, instead of being they would like eat these evil beings, and they would bring them into themselves. It was considered very dangerous, but usually it was some old man or some old woman, and they always looked really terrible because they'd eaten all this evil, but they were able to do it, kind of like the Green Mile sort of thing. But they would take it away from people, especially at like wakes when people had passed away or were fixing to pass away. They would eat up all of that, what they had been through. Really strange stuff. But I wonder if the fear when you encounter that there's a foreign thing that's coming to you, and the problem with sleep is like kind of like we've talked about nightmares before on Mike's show, Troubled Minds, which I also have. I have it down in the description. So anybody watching, if you want to check that out, that's down there. As well as everybody else that's here right now, they all have channels respectively, and they're down in that description right there. So now, the idea that these evil entities, I don't call it evil because it has a negative effect on us, and we're afraid because we have to sleep, kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street, because we have to sleep, we're going to encounter them. And I've heard cases of this, and I've experienced this myself, where you continue to have the same nightmare over and over and over to the point where you're afraid to even go to sleep. I used to have this all the time when I was a little kid, and I've had it happen since, never running as long as I did back then, but literally like that, where you're encountering the same being or like scenario over and over again, and you know it's going to happen, and you try to do all kinds of different things to like that's probably where they come up with all those different effects of, you know, different things that they put around the room, and the you know, the dream catcher thing and all kinds of stuff, and the eye of God and all that stuff, to try to prevent them from getting attacked in the dream state. That links very much into the fairy realm stuff too, where they would put like pages of the Bible in the cabins, or bury a cat under a fireplace, or like turn their clothes inside out, or put knives like underneath the bed frame, or like put things in the window, iron, all this, trying to keep this stuff out because it would get them while they were sleeping. And that fear about that seems to be, which is still, what the trouble is that it still matters because it happens to children very often. And it still happens to individuals, especially if they're on the search in the dream state, especially if they are attempting to reach into that. These things appear to be like the lions at the gate, and they also seem to feed and be interested in children, probably to associate or to control the outcome of that individual in the future, perhaps. But I think, I'm not sure if it's best just to implement. I wonder with people who have alien abductions, I've heard some of them say that they've tried absolutely everything, and no matter what they do, they still find them, and they still get abducted, and they still have a terrible experience, and they'll move from room to room. And some of them report seeing the orbs, James, that they see orbs in the room. And I've heard individuals think that those orbs, or ghost lights perhaps, are being sent by the aliens or beings from this other dimension. And this may be more than one type of thing. We should consider that. But that person will try to move from room to room, house to house, just like the paranormal, like when a person's haunted, the thing follows them. And they try all kinds of stuff. And maybe some of the stuff is tried and true. I have no idea. But James, what do you think about the seeing the ghost lights as like, or the orbs as being like a scouts, or like kind of like a, like in Phantasm, where the the tall man and he has those orb things, and they, do you know what I'm talking about?
I never actually saw that one, but it is interesting you mentioned that, because I've heard encounters people have had with different kinds of beings where they saw orbs, and then the orbs would either gather together to make a full image of something, or they would just be there and then they'd be gone, and then yeah, that person would either wake up to them being there, or they would appear when they're falling asleep. Orbs, lights, these lights that people see in their rooms, it really just does seem like they can be almost anything in a way, because you hear about these, and I've talked about this before. So if there's some people that hear that probably have heard this, it seems like these lights are seen everywhere, whether it's in people's rooms, in outside in nature, up by telephone poles and the wires, up out in space. So who knows what these lights are, and I think they can be many things. Just regarding to the implants, real quick, is one thing I've heard that in some cases when they come out, they will just disintegrate, so where you can't find them, you can't even save them anymore. So that I have heard that in many cases. So that makes it hard for anyone for people that maybe don't have any experience with this to possibly even believe in all that. Um, so I just had to throw that in there real quick. But yeah, in the dreams, I had someone or something that was a few years ago that was just every night for about a week. I was just having, I don't remember them now, but I was just having negative dreams, and it was so bad. I have these two different kinds of quartz crystals, and I just had this idea one day to keep them by me, like right by my head, basically in bed, and they work. It really, for me anyway, it has worked, and I think it's a good thing to do whenever you have an experience. Try to look into different things and see what works and see what doesn't, because I think it can be different for everyone, and I definitely don't claim to have any answers to how all this works, but definitely research is definitely important, I think. So yeah.
That's good advice. What is up with the light thing though? Like children intuitively, I do it. Like as long as the light's on, it should be good. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times it just makes people feel so much more comfortable, because it seems as if, even though they're probably there, you just can't see them. But when the lights go out, then you can see them for some reason or something. Or the prevalence of it being in the closet or under the bed, in the classic ideas of, in the case of the paranormal, but also monsters as it is. The concept of that, I wonder if it's because those spaces don't get a lot of light normally, and it changes something about the why under the bed, right? Good hiding place. But could it be something to do with the fact that the light isn't usually hitting that area? Same with closets. And if information is carried on the light waves that, as Algo was mentioning earlier, are visible spectrum light waves, and like the invisible light from spectrum waves, the spectrum of light that we can't see. If there is still information traveling in that, but the darkness, see, eventually creates a weight. If you ever seen the Crookes rotator, and it was designed by the scientist Crookes. I've mentioned this before, and I've shown a GIF of it before, but I'll just mention real quick. In the instance of the Crookes rotator, what he had done, the scientist Crookes, was he had a fan, basically like a windmill, and one side was white and one side was painted black, and he covered it with a veil of glass, and he put it in the sunlight, and the dark side of the fan was it would cause the fan to spin. And it's a phenomenon in science where the light has a weight to it because it's carrying sound frequencies or something to that effect, that somehow there's weight in light itself, which is, really interesting when you think about the way the Earth spins, not just by magnetic force itself, that there might be a weight in some of the different light spectrums that, and the color black, the same with a perfect black body mass, it absorbs all of the color spectrums and thereby becomes denser and denser till eventually it actually begins to emit its out of the darkness. It emits its own light. This very strange phenomenon there. So when you think about these dark places where these beings are existing, for example, in a cave or in a closet or under a bed or wherever you, or in the dark, at night in the dark. But when you encounter these things, if it's got something to do with the dark, if you're asleep in the daylight, it still seems to happen. But, some people, when they have nightmares like that, they'll stay up till the sun comes up and then go to sleep.
Yeah. A lot of people that have any kind of negative experiences with the paranormal, they will do that. They'll feel better about sleeping in the daytime than they will at night, or they will, if they sleep at night, they will keep the lights on. I think it's partly a matter of it's easier to see things in the light. They associate that more with daytime and with being aware of more when, as compared to when it's dark. In darkness, you can't always necessarily see what's there. So I can understand that in a way. But yeah, the light and dark, I think also it may even be, if you think of like closets or under the bed, those are kind of areas that you don't necessarily go into a lot, especially under a bed. So it's sort of a other area, other realm, and that could be maybe why it's, there are more experiences with that, and maybe that's where some beings do stay, whether they're positive or negative. It's always hard to say until you have the experience, I think. But I think darkness can be frightening for people, and I understand that. Although it is funny because I think it can also be, for some people, it can be relaxing as well. So it really just depends.
Yeah, I like to sleep in darkness. I like to sleep that way. But then I have noticed I don't mind. I mean, I actually, for the longest time, I couldn't sleep if there was any light on, like even like a light on something like electronic. But it would feel to me like I could tell a difference in the dark of the room. Sometimes it would build to such a pitch that I would be like, oh, that's it, and turn the light on. Because even though I'd had no problem sleeping in it before, but it was like as if I could feel a weight that was like a tension, or like the room was getting full or something. And it got so overwhelming that I was just like, that'd be it. But I actually had that happen one time, and like a jar of buttons fell off a shelf. There was like as if there was a tension building up in the room in the dark, and I was asleep. I wasn't asleep. I was trying to go to sleep. And I had a weird experience. It could have been explained by something, I suppose, but I had a shelf over my closet, and there was a big jar of buttons, because I was collecting buttons for some reason. And I felt a tension kind of growing in the dark in my bed. And it kind of felt scary. It was a scary feeling because I could feel the weight of like the dark in the room or something. And then it was like almost like a letting off a bit of energy. The buttons fell off the shelf. Very strange thing. And I think the accounts too, when people have some of these encounters where they see something in the dark, they feel it first, kind of a growing feeling. And people would say, well, they're starting to imagine it. I think there is something to that you have to that there could be something that a person could accidentally create a thought form that then might go around feeding on people and abducting them, and but that goes into the parasitic vampire thing, which is similar to the abduction thing. Kenjiro is in here, and let's see what he thinks.
Hey everybody, I'm a longtime listener to Algo Rhythm and his stream, and we certainly don't usually talk about these concepts, and I'm grateful that you do, Jennifer. I'm really grateful for the perspectives that everybody else has chimed in on. The was it James? Oh, actually, maybe I can't recall if it was James or Rohan who were talking about when you referenced Under the Bed. Um, there's so many things that interplay, and I don't want to limit it to the concept of duality, light and dark. Although to me, part of that's a factor in that under the bed and certain corners, wherever those buttons were, whatever was outside of the forefront of your mind, we don't always look under the bed. It's just it's something that gets pushed to the periphery, and that only until something like the child saying, "Daddy, there's a monster under my bed," do you think to, or that it's that time of the month or spring cleaning that you're going to get under there. So certain things that either it's a reflexive way to remember what has been disregarded, what's been pushed to the side, or the to tap further into the when you talk about esoteric or history, what has served man all of our that we're aware of, that we've been told of our existence, however much of that may be a fabrication. Being afraid of the dark has served us really well.
Yeah.
Because
For
so
sure.
so to be critical of children or even grown-ups who have an inherent fear of the dark, it's well earned. But we also know, whether it's Dr. Andrew Huberman and other people that talk about with all these modern things like these cell phones, although Algo and I call them black mirrors on occasion, that and light from your iPad or your phone is going to keep you awake when you should be going to sleep. So I think that's good that one of your reflexes is that you want total darkness to actually be asleep. But as you got older, you had to get over that initial fear of the dark, which again I referenced was something that people have. If there's time, I did want to backtrack to that point about that sin, the sin eater you talked about.
Go right ahead. Go really fast.
Oh, real quick, there was an old
Not too
TV
quick. Don't go too quick.
relatively.
Okay.
Algo knows I can talk too much, and you've let me talk way too long for just like 3 paragraphs just now. But
No, you just got here. You just
the-
got here, so go ahead.
the topic of the Sin Eater was in this old TV show in the 70s, I think it was called Night Gallery. A gentleman whose name I'm forgetting in chat remembered the actor who was on the show, The Waltons, was actually in it. The big build-up, sorry, spoiler if you plan to see this or haven't seen it. There's a whole bunch of food. The food is scarce in the town for whatever reasons, and there's a whole bunch of food set up on this table to mourn the death of someone in the village who died. The main one of the 2 main actors are the son and the mother, and apparently the father of the village was the one who was the sin eater. Okay, and she said, long story short, he was going to take over that job. But as a sin eater, all this food, and the village had been starving, remember, when he would eat this food, he would take on the sins of whoever had deceased.
Yeah.
And then the spoiler for the episode was it was his father who died, who was the previous sin eater. So not only was he eating the sins of his father, he was eating the accumulated sins of the entire village or city or whatever. So and they didn't have ratings when I was a kid, when my mom would have us watch Night Gallery. So it was a lot to take in. But that the fact that you are aware of this topic, and that for mainstream media to have that on a TV show as obscure and late at night as it was shown, called Night Gallery, where there was no filter for kids, means this is a question I want to posit to you, Jennifer, as well as all of the panel. Do we believe in the duality that whether it's the Illuminati or the Bohemian Grove, NWO, whoever is trying to control society for whatever ends, that some of them, it's not whether we understand their numerology or their patterns, but that their spells or their adherence to numerology, that they believe that that's what works, and that why we see the duality in their programming, in their movies, in their social media, is that they have to tell us what they're doing for it to affect our minds, where we're like, oh, okay, that's the message that's on a subconscious level or obvious level, where, as I said in your chat, we have a degree of spiritual sovereignty. We have to allow it. But if they coerce us going, oh, big fear, here comes the next 7-Eleven job application, that you, by saying, oh, this has happened before, and that subconsciously we allow it, but that they have to tell us kind of telegraph what they're going to do, so we allow ourselves to be susceptible to it because we've received their message. Sorry, that was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that. Thank you, but yeah, it seems. I think they have designed the whole system to make it conducive for us to be, for any instincts to be completely dormant, and we've been, kind of like the way you take a tiger or you take a bear and you keep it as a pet, or you keep it in confines and you control it that way. As long as you can get it from a baby, you keep doing that and doing that. Eventually, that's all they know is the monkey thing and all that. So I think that they do it intentionally for sure. And then the sin eating thing, what you're talking about with that, it reminds me a lot of the caste system too. There's a similarity going on there. I was listening as you were talking about it, that you see, because the different layers of the caste system, they
Yes.
can't touch the food of different
Oh,
castes.
okay.
So there's
Interesting.
something funny about that. And then I wanted to, because I have to go here shortly. Well, go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Well, no, I was waiting. I'm good.
What else do you think? Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, I think I honestly feel like I've said plenty, but I did want to thank the panel for all their insights, as well as Algo Rhythm's account for how he goes through dreams. I did want to relate to someone in chat as well as panel that what I like to generalize as the indoctrination that this quote unquote matrix or this world has done for me is, as we were growing up, we were said, okay, it's time to wake up. Get out of your dreams. Don't be something else of my personality is that I will quote unquote daydream. And when you accept the responsibilities of this matrix in this world, okay, no more dreaming, don't dream. Or you're not asleep anymore, so no time to go back to reflect on your dreams. I haven't had lucid dreaming for years. So it's very interesting to converse with all of you who are more not only active but proactive and can intentionally at times lucid dream and interact with your dream world. So I don't know if part of that is still something where I'm dealing with why I can't traverse that.
Well, sometimes I suppose sometimes it's useful and sometimes it's not useful, and maybe if you're in the mood and you'll try to, and then other times you don't want to. We go through stages of life because it is our life, and sometimes you're going to be wanting to do things like this where you study your dreams, I'm sure, and then other times you got other things you have on your plate and you can't get around to it. But this is because this whole right now, because people have these experiences. I'm sure there are some people out there that I hope will hear this, and they'll know that they're not entirely alone in the experience, that they are having something happen while they're trying to go to sleep, and that they are having, maybe not even a dream state in the case of a lucid dream, but maybe they're just a disturbance of some sort that is occurring, and a sense that they have had something happen and that the world does not understand it because they haven't actually physically gone somewhere. But it's still valid that they might have had some type of experience, because all of history of humanity and all of our lore supports it, that there is something that is occurring. We don't know what it is, but everyone can find something that might work for them. And then I want to ask Rohan what he thinks. We're almost out of time.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Jen. Yeah, there's a lot to think about in there, But I thought Ken made a good point with this thing of how it seems like they need to tell us what's happening. And I've often thought that feels like a kind of cosmic disclaimer, so they can, try and avoid what karma it is. It's like sliding it through the back door, like a little sort of loophole. And I reckon it's deep psychology stuff, is how I feel. Because then if you plant the seed in somebody, it's kind of like you're setting a new, quote, normal, a new narrative for the new direction. And then unconsciously, you're going to start bartering and normalizing this new narrative. And so then you're already on the 5 stages of grieving. Do you know what I'm saying? So then it's easier on an unconscious level to let go of whatever narrative you had and adopt the new one without a moment's thought. It's like you almost have to, these days, you almost have to make a conscious effort to stop and think. because we're bombarded so much. And Blavatsky warned about this. The more the technologies are on the way, it's going to be this big distraction game. And I think she even said there's a war. It's a war for your mind, you know. And it's kind of gets into that. So it gets a bit scary.
Algo always says that too. Algo, what are your thoughts?
No, I think I think everything that you guys have shared is 100% as far as how we navigate. And there probably is a battle. There probably always has been. They call it the spiritual battle now, or whatever they've called it throughout history. And we're ill prepared for the most part. I think if you can live from an instinctual level, you're probably better prepared than if you live from a societal trained level. And as like you said earlier, Jen, if anybody happens on this and they listen through the things you're going through, we've been through, and we're going to continue to go through them. And I think you've kind of pointed a way for people to gain their own tools. Like James said, you got to try things to be able to navigate it, because there is no real book that says, okay, when you encounter this, this is what you do. Or if there is, we misinterpret it. We've been misled about it. They rewrote it and they hide it from us. So, I mean, at this stage of our development, we're kind of on our own until we have streams like this where people can get together and share ideas and explore topics that you don't talk about. So I think it was great, and keep it up, and look forward to seeing you do the next one.
I'm glad you came on. I think we're going to do another show about, like, I'm going to do another show sometime, not anytime immediately. I'll do another show about something completely different next time. Oh. And, but about all of the antidotes that people have, that I've heard about and maybe others have heard about, there are a lot of antidotes against these things that people are encountering. And there are different types of things they can do that aren't too far out or weird. And people, I'd like for them to hear, like, I mean, from all cultures, like all the different, because maybe that would help them in some way. And some of those things are tried and true and handed down from like grandparents that told, you know, so on and so forth. James, what are some of your last thoughts real quick too, if you have any?
Yeah, this has been great hearing everybody, and I appreciate being on here with you all. And but yeah, it does seem, it's ironic to me how much is out there in the entertainment sphere, that it's all this paranormal stuff, that science fiction and paranormal and supernatural, and yet it's all labeled as fiction, and yet people have strange experiences all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But also, that's okay, and they're not all bad. That's one of the main things I always like to emphasize, is that, you know, there's a lot out there, but it's a range of things. It's a range of good and bad and in between. So just research is important, as I said, and connecting with everyone, and like we're doing here. So thank you again for doing this.
This was so fun. I'm so glad that people made it in tonight to kind of check out my first live stream. This is my first live stream. And I want to especially thank So James Salsido, he has Salsido Paranormal. It's down in the description. And Algo Rhythm, he has his channel too. I put it down in the description. And then Rohan, he has his Exiled Minds podcast. And I put that down in the description. And you can click on it and go watch their stuff. And then Troubled Minds too, which comes on here in about 30 minutes. Maybe if he's on, we're going to check that out. And that would be fun. I hope you guys liked this topic and that it was somehow helpful, or at least interesting, something that interested you. If you want to show support for my channel, I have a link to a PayPal and Cashapp, and then share my videos or just subscribe, but do please share if you get the chance and you want to. And thank you so much for being here and hanging out on the stream and chatting. Hello, Big Willie, I see you. And Ether Elephant, Jeff, and Bobby, and Robert, and Kinjiro, of course, and Sethcliffe, and who else? All of you nice folks. So have a great night, and I'm going to cut it right now at 8:30. That was an hour and a half. And I'm gonna have to make a list of more stuff that I'm gonna bring up to like ask the people who come in to like so I can like be like, and another question, because I love hearing you guys' ideas. All right, so have a great night and thanks for being here with me. I'm gonna try to leave, so because I'm like, because this is the first time I've done this, so I'm gonna do this and see what happens. I think I do this. Boop, 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 and boop, and then I think I in broadcast and boop myself. Okay, so I'll do that. Bye, guys.